So I thought I'd do another quick update for the Dungeon Crawl board game for my Make Stuff 2021 challenge. The last time I did an update, I was really crunching the numbers, trying to figure out exactly how many assets I need to produce, what kind of trimming and pruning I need to do from the game design to try to get this game out the door by the end of the year. So I continued along that line. The last to-do list I came up with, I think my counter count was around 184 counters. But this game, I'm gonna have to basically distribute this game via print on demand using Game Crafter. It's really the only logical solution because there's no way I'm gonna print like 1,000 copies of this game overseas. And maybe at some point next year, I'll kickstart like a bigger production of this game. So I was looking at the Game Crafter cost calculators, and basically every 150 counters, the price of the product's gonna go up $10. So I needed to get my counter count under 150 for like every single counter, or I might as well go 300 counters and add another $10 to the price of the game. So I thought an interesting constraint, considering that I'm really pushing hard to try to get this game finished, is to go with the lower counter count, which means I needed to prune like 34 counters from this game to get the counters down to 150, which is a significant pruning operation. And it was kind of an interesting experiment to figure out like what I could cut from the game and still have a functional game. And I think I have finally figured it out. I'm finally down to 150 counters. This is a bare bones version of the game. It's fully functional. I didn't have to cut any functionality, but I really just stripped all the fat. And this is the most streamlined version of the game that I could imagine at this point. So this is just sort of a proof of the 150 counters. This is it. This is the entire counter set for the entire game at this point. I mentioned on my last video that I was pruning caves from the game, so the core set is just temples and tombs. There are 48 monster counters because some of the monsters are groups, like the cultists. There's 8 cultists. There's 5 giant spiders, 5 lizard men, 5 plague rats, 5 skeleton warriors, 5 zombies, and then there's like a bunch of singleton monsters as well. I stripped all the superfluous counters down to the bare minimum, so there's 75 counters on each one of these pages. They're double-sided, and you can see you got the warning counters on the back of the monsters. I took another spin through the art on all of these to try to beef up the line quality and just make these a little more readable at such a small scale. And I'm pretty happy with how the art's turned out for these. I may end up adding some color to the monsters. I took another pass through all 4 character class gear based on the last video where I was sort of reorganizing all the different gear types and giving each character a lot more starting gear. So now we have 16 counters for each character class, including their standee. I had to prune the number of doors that are going to come with the game and the number of staircases, and we've got debris, and then on the back of the debris are gaps. I figured instead of having like a ton of doors when you're playing this game, and a lot of them are unlocked and some of them are locked and some of them are wizard locked. Unlocked doors, they're just sort of in a way and they don't really do anything. So I like the idea that if you encounter a door, it is locked. So a door is basically a barrier, it's an obstacle, keeps you from getting from one tile into the next. And so there's going to be fewer doors, but when you hit a door, it's going to have a real function in the game. So that's an example of the type of streamlining I'm doing. And same with stairs. Instead of stairs all over the dungeon, the game only comes with 3 staircases. And if you hit a staircase, it's a really big deal. It slows you down, it increases the threat level. And so instead of lots of doors and lots of stairs, there are fewer of each that you will encounter, but it's kind of a big turning point, a big milestone during the course of any game. And then as you can see on the back of all of these items, the power items, the lost artifacts, the dark relics, the objective tokens, and then the treasures and the traps. On the back of all of those are these generic discovery tokens. So these are the types of things that you're going to discover as you're exploring, and you're either going to like find the objectives that you're looking for, you're going to stumble onto these lost artifacts, you're going to stumble onto treasure, and you're also going to trigger traps. So yeah, so this is it. This is the entire counter set. The one advantage to going with 150 counters instead of 300 is that the game is going to be a lot quicker to set up. It's going to be a lot easier to manage the counters, and it's going to be easier to get to the table. It's going to be easier to store. It's going to give the game a compact and streamlined feeling that I've been going for since the beginning. So it's really hard to cut as many counters as I cut from the game. It was really hard to go from like 50 plus monsters that I designed originally down to 20 that are going to actually appear in this game. It was really hard to pull power items and lost artifacts and dark relics from this core set. But I think at the end of the day, the game will be better for it, and I can always release another set with a bunch more items and double the amount of content. But I think for this original starter set, I'm pretty excited now about how streamlined and compact the game is. And then I went ahead and printed out these just kind of proofs for all the monster cards in the game. So now there are only 20 monster types, so there are only 20 monster cards. And I decided, instead of continuing to iterate on all the copy in Photoshop, which is very tedious and painful, I decided to just make some white blank spaces where I can handwrite information and update it as I'm playtesting the game. So I can playtest like a dozen games in a row and constantly erase and rewrite rules as I play for each monster until I get the handwritten version of all these monster cards the way I want it. And then I'll do the final Photoshop fonts. And the back of the monster cards, I finally have a first pass at what the back of the monster cards are going to look like. You have your unalerted state, your alerted state, your melee chart, your damage instruction for a natural 1 and a natural 6 when you do roll on the chart, and then instructions for both miss and both hit. These are all the different states, all the different behaviors that each monster might be in at any given moment. And I made this all blank so that I can fill these out by hand and adjust them as I play test. And then here I've just been updating my asset list, and so this is just a spreadsheet reflection of everything I just showed. I've been really struggling since I did that playtesting with Jeff, the first round of playtesting I did, with how I designed the map tiles. The map tiles originally were these 4x4 square tiles, and I did this on purpose because I kind of wanted to break away from the regular map tiles that you see in a lot of games where the center of each tile connects to the next one. I kind of wanted it to be a little more organic and freeform, but that actually led to a lot of weird situations during playtesting where map tiles didn't really connect properly, and there were instances where the map tiles sort of needed to overlap other map tiles, and it just produced a lot of tension with building the maps. And the more I think about it, the more I've decided that I don't really like the 4x4 tiles with the non-symmetrical connections. It creates more problems than it solves. So I think I am going to go with these symmetrical map tiles that have connectors in the center of the walls, so that we'll end up with like nice uniform maps. It also creates like smaller, more compact maps. The maps don't seem to sprawl as much if you have symmetrical connections in the center of each tile side. So I've printed up a new template This is my new map tile template, and as you can see, it's like a 3x3 with a half space around each edge, and this is like kind of a really light template, and I can do my hand-drawn map tile inking on top of this light template, scan them in. This won't show, the light template won't show up. I'll capture just the line work, and that worked really well the first time I drew the map tiles. So here I just have like a huge stack of photocopy paper with my map template on it, and I just need to sit down and spend a day or two redrawing all the map tiles. And there's going to be more map tiles. There's going to be 36 map tiles instead of 24. I haven't decided if they're going to be double-sided yet or not, but there's going to be at least 36 map tiles. And a certain number of those are going to be specific to temples, and a certain number of those tiles are going to be specific to the tombs that are underneath the temples. And so I think what I came up with is my goal is to try to get the game under $30. So I'm hoping that the final product will come in at like, $29.95 or something, and that is like as cheap as I can possibly make it. There's going to be literally no way to make the game any cheaper than that. Like, even if I went with 18 map tiles instead of 36, I think I would only save, a couple bucks. And then it's just a matter of like how many dice I want to include, how big the rule book's going to be, and what the quality of the box is going to be for the game. But it looks like the game is going to end up being somewhere between $30 and $35. I'm going to do everything humanly possible to keep the game under $30. And then I was just working on some sort of mental playtesting of the Temple of the Old Worm scenario, and just kind of playing through and figuring out like what the cultist behaviors would be, and figuring out what the flow for this scenario will be. And I'm going to be doing that for Tomb of the Necromancer and Hellgate 2, and then sandbox mode. So counters are done, cards are done, got to draw the map tiles, do another huge round of playtesting where I literally just for a week straight, all I'm going to do is playtest this game, and hopefully I'll get like a couple dozen playtests under my belt, and then I'll be able to do some editing and tweaking to the data on the monster cards. That's the big thing right now. I'll probably do one final set of revisions to the data on this stuff, just to make sure that all the little stats and data on each counter makes sense. So there's still a lot to do. I mean, this is still probably a couple months worth of work, but I'm getting there. Just getting like a final pile of assets, and just knowing exactly how many bits are going to come with this game and exactly what each bit is going to look like has been huge.